In the vast silence of space, patterns began to repeat. For decades, astronomers had mapped the heavens, charting distant stars, tracing the pulse of quasars, measuring the faint ripples of cosmic background radiation. Most signals were ordinary, the natural music of the universe. But one night, buried within layers of static, a pattern emerged. It was deliberate, rhythmic, intentional. At first, it was dismissed as noise, but the longer the scientists watched, the clearer it became. It was not the first time such a thing had been detected. Centuries earlier, before humanity truly understood its own sky, stories were told of visitors who came from the stars, lingered for a short time, and then vanished without explanation. Ancient carvings, cave murals, and fragments of forgotten languages carried hints of tall beings cloaked in light, of fire in the sky, and of warnings no one fully understood. Humanity cataloged those tales as myth. But now, the same sequence of pulses that had been rumored in old, obscure manuscripts returned, stronger, undeniable. They were back. Observatories across the world scrambled to confirm the phenomenon. Each telescope pointed upward recorded the same haunting series of tones. The pattern echoed a strange familiarity, like something seen long ago but buried deep in cultural memory. Nations reacted in different ways. Some governments immediately classified the data, fearing mass panic. Others rushed to announce it publicly, hoping to prepare their citizens. And among the ordinary people, awe mixed with terror. They asked the same question, one whispered through generations. Why did they leave the first time, and what could bring them back now? As weeks passed, the signals grew bolder. They were no longer hidden in cosmic noise. They were loud, deliberate, timed perfectly with Earth's rotation as if waiting to be noticed. Then came the sightings. Satellite operators were the first to see them, shadows against the darkness, shapes not belonging to asteroids or comets. Massive objects, larger than any human spacecraft, positioned themselves just beyond lunar orbit. They made no attempt to hide. For the first time in centuries, Earth was under direct observation. The military establishments of every powerful nation mobilized instantly. Warships repositioned, missile systems recalibrated, contingency plans drawn up in secrecy. Yet there was an unspoken acknowledgement among generals and presidents alike. No matter how advanced Earth's weaponry had become, it would be like sharpened sticks against thunder if these visitors proved hostile. Humanity's power was impressive only when measured against itself. Against an interstellar civilization, it was fragile. Still, humanity did not cower. The United Nations called an emergency summit, and for once, rival nations set aside disputes. The idea of a greater power watching them forced a kind of unity not seen in centuries. Delegates argued fiercely over how to respond. Some demanded immediate attempts at communication. Others warned against revealing anything that could be exploited. A few whispered privately that humanity was not ready for another visit, that the last time, though almost forgotten, ended with destruction. Yet history's details were blurred by myth, leaving only uncertainty. Meanwhile, in the homes and streets of ordinary people, the atmosphere was different. Fear existed, yes, but so did wonder. Children gathered on rooftops with telescopes, hoping to glimpse a distant light. Artists painted visions of beings descending once more. Farmers told stories by firelight, echoing legends passed down by grandparents who swore their ancestors had seen strange visitors. Humanity's greatest strength was revealed not in its leaders but in its people. The ability to imagine, to dream, to adapt even when the sky itself seemed to change. As days turned into weeks, no direct contact came. The massive vessels held position, silent watchers above the earth. But then something shifted. In cities across the globe, from New York to Karachi, from Cairo to Tokyo, symbols appeared in the sky, holographic shapes shimmering against the clouds. They were not words but universal mathematics, circles, spirals, prime numbers. Every symbol carried meaning, yet meaning that was just beyond full comprehension. The world's brightest mathematicians scrambled to decode them, working tirelessly in underground labs and university halls alike. The symbols were not a message of peace, nor of war. They were a reminder: we are here, and we remember you. The deeper the scholars studied, the stranger it became. The patterns contained references to ancient numbers found carved into megalithic structures, long thought to be coincidence. It was as if the visitors had left breadcrumbs centuries ago, expecting humanity to eventually reach this point. It was not a new beginning. It was the continuation of a story humanity had forgotten it was part of. The first real wave of fear hit when the symbols synchronized worldwide, glowing above cities at the exact same moment. They formed a single phrase, not in human language, but in one clear enough that it needed no translation. We have returned. The words echoed not with sound but with a pressure that settled in the chest, a resonance that bypassed ears and entered directly into thought. Millions collapsed to their knees, some weeping in terror, others in reverence. Governments could no longer deny or contain the truth. The aliens were not just watching. They were announcing themselves. The world erupted in chaos. Religious leaders across traditions declared it a sign of prophecy fulfilled. Some hailed them as gods returning. Others warned of false deceivers. Economies trembled as markets crashed. Travel halted. Borders tightened. And yet, amid the chaos, something remarkable happened. People began reaching out to each other. Strangers helped strangers. Families reunited. Old enemies put aside grudges. The presence of an unknown power reminded humanity that in the face of the infinite, their divisions were meaningless. That unity was fragile, but it was real. The United Nations Task Force sent out continuous attempts at communication. Radio waves, light signals, even spacecraft launched carrying symbolic gifts. Books, art, samples of human music. The visitors responded with silence. Only the symbols in the sky remained. It was as if they were waiting for humanity to make a specific choice, one that had not yet been understood. Days stretched into weeks and still no further word. But then, without warning, the ships moved. Slowly, steadily, one descended through the atmosphere. It did not land but hovered, massive and incomprehensible, above the city of Nairobi. Its presence blotted out the sun for hours. People filled the streets, staring upward in awe. The military rushed to surround it but dared not fire. Reporters broadcast the moment across the world. Billions watched in silence as, for the first time in remembered history, the visitors returned not to myth but to living reality. The ship hung there, silent, for an entire day. Then, as night fell, a shaft of light descended. No being emerged, no voice spoke. Instead, the ground shook as a massive geometric symbol burned itself into the soil, precise, impossibly perfect, glowing faintly as though alive. Scientists rushed forward to analyze it, but those who approached too closely felt overwhelming nausea and dread. The message was not for individuals but for humanity as a whole. And so it remained, etched into the earth, impossible to erase. Across the world, speculation reached fever pitch. Why had they come? Why now? And why here in this time, in this place? Some believed the answer was simple. Earth had finally advanced enough to be worth engaging again. Others whispered darker theories, that humanity had grown too fast, too strong, and the visitors had come not in curiosity but in fear. The only certainty was that this was no accident. They had chosen to reveal themselves now for a reason. As humanity wrestled with the implications, something unexpected began to happen. People dreamed. Millions reported the same visions, of towering beings cloaked in light, of voices that spoke without words, of warnings carried across time. Some woke trembling, others inspired. Scientists dismissed them as mass hysteria, the brain inventing patterns under stress. But the sheer scale was undeniable. The visitors were no longer just in the skies. They had entered human thought. And then came the silence. The ships held position again, the symbols faded, and for weeks they made no move. Humanity was left with a question that spread like wildfire, spoken on every news station. whispered in every home. Why had they returned? What did they want this time? The answer did not come in words but in a shift, subtle but undeniable. One by one, the world's satellites began failing. Communications faltered, power grids flickered, aircraft systems malfunctioned. The disruptions were not destructive but controlled, as if to remind humanity of its dependence on fragile machines. The message was clear: we can reach into your world at will. Fear deepened, but so too did determination. Humanity refused to bow. Even as systems crashed, humans adapted. Radios were rebuilt from scrap, old signal methods revived. Communities learned to survive without networks. And as the visitors watched from above, perhaps they saw what they had forgotten centuries ago: that humanity was not defined by its tools but by its will to persist. The first section of their return closed not with war, nor with peace, but with a terrible, fragile balance. Ships in the sky, symbols in the earth, silence in the air. And a single truth whispered in the hearts of billions: they are back, and they will not leave again without reason. The silence of the visitors was finally broken when one of the great vessels descended lower than ever before. Hovering at the edge of the stratosphere, it released a pulse that resonated across every communication channel on Earth. Radios screamed with static, televisions flickered, satellites glitched into darkness. Then a voice emerged, not in sound but in thought, transmitted directly into the minds of billions. It was heavy, resonant, layered with tones no human throat could produce, and yet every listener understood its meaning. We left once, we return now. What was begun must be finished. The words carved themselves into memory, undeniable, unforgettable. Humanity had its first direct message, but it brought no comfort, only deeper questions. What was begun? Why must it be finished? And why, after centuries of absence, had they chosen this moment? Leaders demanded answers, but the aliens gave none. Instead, a new symbol appeared in the skies, an intricate design of intersecting spirals and lines, floating across continents simultaneously. Teams of mathematicians, linguists, and cryptographers worked without pause. Slowly, patterns revealed themselves, coordinates pointing to specific sites across Earth. Ancient ruins, buried temples, forgotten places left untouched for millennia. The meaning became clear. The visitors wanted something hidden long before recorded history. Excavations began under tight supervision. In deserts, in frozen wastelands, beneath jungles, fragments of impossible material were unearthed. They were not stone, not metal, but some fusion of both, resistant to all analysis. And in each site, the fragments glowed faintly when brought into contact with the alien symbols. The pieces fit together, a puzzle only the visitors knew fully. Whatever they had come for, it was here on Earth, and humanity had unknowingly been standing on it for ages. Fear grew sharper. Rumors spread that the visitors sought not resources but something deeper, something essential. Some claimed they wanted the planet itself. Others argued they were after humanity's very essence. The truth came suddenly, in a second transmission that froze the world. This world produces what we cannot. That is why we return. No further detail, no explanation. Just the cryptic declaration that Earth contains something unique, something absent from the vastness of space. The implications were staggering. All across the planet, people debated what it meant. Was it water? No, countless other worlds had water. Was it organic life? No, too many exoplanets harbored microbes. Then what was left? What could humanity have that the stars did not? The alien ships remained untouchable. Fighter jets that approached them vanished in bursts of light, not destroyed but displaced, reappearing hundreds of kilometers away, shaken but alive. The message was clear: aggression was pointless. Yet even in this imbalance, humans refused to surrender. Diplomats reached out, pleading for negotiation. The aliens responded once more, and this time their words were darker. You are dangerous because of what you create. You shape futures from chaos. You break order. You rise where others collapse. We came once before to end this path. We left when you were small, but you are no longer small. Across the world, panic threatened to unravel everything. If beings who spanned the stars feared humanity's growth, what chance did Earth have? Yet amid the fear, resilience took root. Scientists argued passionately that this was proof humanity was exceptional. Soldiers whispered to each other that if aliens feared them, then humanity had power after all. Ordinary citizens, despite terror, continued with life, refusing to bow. The very thing the aliens condemned, the stubborn human refusal to yield, flared brighter with every passing day. But resistance took more than spirit. Secretly, underground bunkers filled with scientists, engineers, and strategists worked to understand alien technology. Though the ships were untouchable, their symbols carried traces of logic, patterns that hinted at underlying structures. Hackers and mathematicians collaborated to decipher them, hoping to find vulnerabilities. What they discovered was startling. The alien code was not flawless. It was advanced beyond comprehension, yet it carried inconsistencies, as though patched together over millennia. To human minds, used to imperfection and improvisation, the flaws were opportunities. Plans began to form, dangerous, fragile, but plans nonetheless. The aliens, meanwhile, made their demand clear. You will yield the source, refuse, and this world will be harvested. The phrase chilled even the most hardened generals. Harvested. The word carried images of planets stripped bare, populations extinguished, ecosystems reduced to silence. Humanity had no choice but to stall. Leaders spoke in half-truths, promising cooperation, asking for time. Secretly, every hour bought was used to strengthen defenses, to study, to prepare. For the first time since the visitors' arrival, a thin spark of hope flickered. They might be overwhelming, but they were not gods. They could be resisted. From the alien perspective, humanity was still primitive, an anomaly. They underestimated the strange strength of illogic. They could not understand humor, defiance, love, the bonds that drove people to fight for each other against impossible odds. And so, in their arrogance, they miscalculated. They pressed harder, demanding faster results, believing fear would break humanity. Instead, it hardened resolve. Entire cities volunteered to resist. Families trained to survive without networks. Farmers stockpiled food for communities. Engineers improvised weapons from outdated technologies. Even in the shadow of inevitable defeat, humanity prepared to endure. The tension reached breaking point when one alien vessel lowered itself directly over Washington, D.C., without firing a shot. It disabled all electronics across the entire eastern seaboard. Darkness spread across millions of homes. Airplanes froze mid-flight and were gently lowered to the ground by forces unseen. Power plants went silent. For hours, the most powerful nation on Earth was reduced to silence. Then came the voice once more. This is the cost of refusal. Your strength is illusion. Your unity is fragile. Surrender what is ours or face removal. But this time, the reaction was not submission. In the darkened cities, people lit candles, sang songs, gathered in the streets. Soldiers carried supplies by hand when vehicles failed. Doctors performed surgeries by lantern light. Humanity adapted instantly, refusing to be broken. The visitors watched, and though they said nothing, their hesitation was visible. This was not the reaction they expected. Instead of chaos, there was stubborn endurance. Instead of collapse, there was community. And somewhere within their alien calculations, unease began to grow. Scientists cracked the next layer of the alien code. What they uncovered was staggering. The visitors' true fear was not humanity's weapons, nor its technology, but its capacity for change. Other civilizations they had encountered across the stars grew slowly, predictably. Humanity was different. In a few short centuries, it had leapt from stone tools to nuclear fire, from horse-drawn carts to exploring space. That speed, that unpredictability, terrified them. They could not control it, could not predict it, and in their vast empire, unpredictability was chaos. That was why they had left before. That was why they had returned now. And that was why they demanded surrender. They wanted to suppress the one force they could not replicate: human adaptability. The revelation galvanized humanity. What was once fear turned into pride. If the greatest power in the galaxy feared them, then humanity was truly something remarkable. Across the world, resistance solidified. Hackers attacked alien transmissions, inserting fragments of human culture into their code. Laughter, music, poetry. Soldiers drilled not with hope of victory but with certainty of meaning. Children painted symbols of defiance on walls. And as alien ships loomed, humanity whispered to itself a single truth: if they feared us, it was because we were worth fearing. The ultimatum came at last. The alien voices, colder than before, pressed into human minds with a single command: time has ended. Yield the source or be erased. Their ships shifted in formation, tightening across the skies, descending lower into the atmosphere. Clouds swirled in their wake. The world seemed to darken under their shadow. For the first time since their return, the threat was no longer implied. It was certain. Harvest would begin, and Earth would not survive unless it gave up what the visitors demanded. But humanity had made its decision. It would not surrender. The first act of defiance was not a missile, nor a weapon of war. It was a signal, crude, jagged, but unmistakable. Across the hacked frequencies of the aliens' own network, humanity broadcast a single message: we are not yours to harvest. It was not sent from a single government or leader, but from a collective of scientists, hackers, and ordinary citizens working together in hidden basements and improvised bunkers. For the first time, the alien silence broke with something more than threats. They responded with anger. Entire grids of power shut down. Satellites fell. Oceans churned unnaturally as gravitational fields shifted. Yet the people of Earth did not bow. They carried on by candlelight, with chalkboards replacing screens, with voices instead of devices. And in the depths of their fury, the visitors finally revealed their truth. A vision swept through every human mind. Not images, not words, but raw experience, an echo of alien history. Worlds conquered, civilizations bent to their order. Societies too rigid to adapt, too predictable to resist. They had encountered countless species across the stars, and all had fallen. But humanity was different. Humanity broke rules. Humanity thrived in chaos. Humanity survived even its own self-destruction. And so the visitors had once chosen to leave, hoping time would erode the anomaly. Instead, humanity had grown stronger, faster, wilder. Now they had returned not merely to harvest, but to prevent the unthinkable: a future where humanity would spread into the stars and challenge their dominion. The revelation only deepened human resolve. If they feared humanity's rise, then humanity would rise faster. Hidden laboratories accelerated desperate projects. Old rockets were repurposed into weapons. Networks of underground resistance formed strategies based not on brute force but unpredictability. Guerrilla tactics, sabotage, deception. Humanity knew it could not win through strength, but it could win by being what the visitors could not comprehend: illogical, improvisational, relentless. The first blows were struck in silence. Hackers infiltrated the alien code again, not to destroy but to disrupt. They planted fragments of human unpredictability inside their systems: snippets of poetry, children's laughter, the sound of rain. At first it seemed meaningless, but then anomalies spread across the alien fleet. Their perfect formations wavered for seconds at a time. Their responses slowed. For the first time, their flawless order cracked. The aliens countered with overwhelming displays of force, disabling entire regions, but humanity pressed on. Every failure taught them more. Every loss became fuel for another attempt. In the shadows, ordinary people became heroes. Farmers smuggled food across battle lines. Children carried messages when networks failed. Engineers salvaged wreckage to build tools no blueprint could predict. Each act was small, fragile, but together they formed a web of resistance the visitors could not unravel. The aliens burned cities, but the spirit of those cities lived on in their people. They suppressed networks, but humanity rebuilt with whispers and hand signals. For every attempt to crush, humanity adapted. And in that adaptation, victory began to take shape. Then came the sacrifice. In one daring strike, a group of volunteers launched a crippled spacecraft loaded with crude nuclear warheads directly into the path of an alien vessel. It was no match for their defenses, and yet when intercepted, the detonation released a burst of electromagnetic chaos the visitors had not anticipated. For minutes, one of the ships faltered, its shields flickering, its structure shuddering. Humanity saw it. The world saw it. The impossible had happened. An alien ship was vulnerable. The volunteers did not survive, but their act ignited the planet. Billions rose not with despair, but with fierce determination. The aliens could bleed, and if they could bleed, they could be beaten. The visitors, shaken, pressed harder. They unleashed waves of psychic pressure, attempting to break human minds directly. Dreams turned into nightmares, thoughts twisted, despair injected like venom. Entire populations staggered under the weight of it. But even then, humanity found a way. Where individuals faltered, communities carried them. Where nightmares consumed the weak, others stood watch through the night, whispering songs, telling stories, reminding each other that fear was only another battlefield. Slowly, the pressure weakened. The aliens could wound minds, but they could not kill the spirit that bound them together. The final revelation came from human scientists who had pieced together the puzzle of what the visitors truly wanted. It was not minerals, not water, not even DNA. It was adaptability itself. The aliens could copy technology, consume resources, imitate forms, but they could not evolve unpredictably. They were bound by their own order, their own perfection. Humanity's chaos was their unattainable treasure. They sought to consume it, to strip the earth of the only force that threatened their rule. But adaptability could not be harvested. It could only be lived. And in seeking to take it, they had ensured humanity would wield it against them. The battles intensified. Skirmishes lit up the skies, not in triumph but in defiance. Every time the visitors struck, humanity struck back, not stronger, not faster, but differently. Illogical traps, unpredictable strikes, strategies no machine could calculate. The visitors grew frustrated, disoriented, uncertain. Their arrogance had not prepared them for prey that did not behave as prey. Slowly, the balance began to shift. Humanity did not need to win outright. It only needed to make victory impossible for the invaders. The climax drew near when, in desperation, the aliens unleashed their greatest weapon. A colossal energy beam intended to scorch entire regions into silence. It descended over Asia, a storm of light brighter than the sun. But at the last moment, a coalition of human satellites, hacked, repurposed, jury-rigged into a shield, intercepted it.